Hey guys, it's Ryan here from Explain, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be watching a movie called A Perfect Enemy, which was released back in 2020. So turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. Jemiaz August, Jeremy, is a renowned architect who's delivering a talk at a conference in Paris. After the end of his conference, he cannot wait any longer to get out of the city. He grabs a taxi, and in his conversation with a friend, we get to know that 20 years ago, he and his wife used to live in Paris, but one day his wife disappeared, never to be found again. Since then, Angus doesn't like to stay in Paris as it reminds him of his wife. He heads directly towards the Paris airport, and he has a feeling that he might miss his flight. After a while, the taxi stops at a traffic signal. It's raining outside, and suddenly a young girl comes up to the taxi and knocks on its window asking for help. She tells Angus that she has been waiting for a taxi for the past hour, but due to such bad weather, all the taxis were busy. She says that she's getting late for her flight and therefore she wants to share the taxi. Angus agrees and lets her in. The girl then introduces herself as Texel Texter, and she says that she's a Dutch national. The two of them share a short conversation, and suddenly she remembers that she left her suitcase behind. Although it's getting late, Angus decides to help her and directs the taxi driver to drive back. Texel gets her bag, and then they head back to the airport. On their way, Angus finds Texel very talkative and can't wait to get to the airport. After finally reaching their destination, they part ways, and Angus finds out that he has missed his flight, and the next flight out of Paris is 2 hours later. So Angus goes to the waiting lounge, and there he sees a miniature figure of the same airport he's currently at. Actually, he's one of the architects who designed the airport 20 years back. But the interesting thing is that he finds a red spot on the figure, which makes him uncomfortable. He gets away from the figure and opens up his iPad. He starts to read online reviews he got for his recent conference. He gets a lot of positive comments, but there is one negative one which he immediately deletes. Then Texel calls him from behind, and she too missed her flight as they were both supposed to be on the same one. She sits in front of him and starts talking to him. She quite comfortably begins to tell him all about herself, her life story, which Angus is the least bit interested in. During their conversation, Angus mentions that the airport that they're in is designed by him. Texel checks the miniature model of the airport and is quite impressed that Angus designed it. She asks him to have a drink with her, but Angus's focus is on something else. He sees that the red patch on the model has spread out in other areas as well. After some persuasion, Angus agrees to drink with her. She then continues to talk about subjects which Angus has no interest in knowing. But when she mentions that she has committed 2 murders, Angus gets hooked and he starts to take interest in her story. Texel tells him that she will narrate her whole life to him in 3 parts. The first part will be disgusting, the second one frightening, while the third one and the last one will be romantic. She starts the first part by telling him about her childhood, which, as per her, was very sad and disturbing. In her childhood, Texel used to live in a small house with her mother, her stepfather, and their 3 cats. Her mother was a terrible cook, and whenever she refused to eat her food, she would get slapped by her stepfather and forced to eat that awful food. As a punishment, her mother used to force her to make food for the cats, and it was made from leftover food, rat guts, and slimy cat food, which all mixed together smelled horrible. Then one day, out of total curiosity, she decided to taste that food. And although it looked and smelled really bad, she realized that it was the best food that she had ever eaten. Angus gets very disgusted after hearing this, and he feels as if he could vomit. Texel continues that it wasn't herself who wanted to do it. To her, it felt like an inner enemy made her do it, an enemy within her that wanted her to suffer. Now, she starts her second part of the story from when she was 12 years old. She had a friend named Feline. She was pretty, intelligent, as well as a good ballet dancer, which made her the most popular girl in school. Feline was her only friend at school, but deep down she was really jealous of her. While she was telling him her story, Angus starts to recall similar things from his childhood when his best friend Frank was a rugby captain. Texel interrupts him and continues her story. She tells him that Feline had a very perfect life. She had good, loving parents, a nice home, and everything Texel ever wanted or wished for in her life. Texel developed jealousy in her heart, and soon her jealousy turned into hatred. Then one night when her parents were fighting, she channeled all of her negative energy towards her friend Feline. This hatred of hers turned so high that she wished for her to die, as she stabbed a doll thinking of it as Feline, and that very night, Feline died of a heart attack. Angus gets very confused on how this could be possible. Texel tells him that she had this special power in her childhood. She had this inner demon that controlled her, and under its influence, she could not think straight, and therefore she indirectly murdered her childhood friend. The same inner enemy that made her eat that horrible cat food and made her commit a murder. Listening to this story, Angus starts to believe that Texel is insane and out of her mind. Her story makes no sense, and now he no longer has any interest in her stories. He goes to the men's washroom where Texel joins him quite comfortably. She has brought a knife with her, and she starts to scare Angus with it. Angus ignores her and gets out. While walking into the lounge, he notices that the red spot in the airport model has now spread even more further. He sits and starts listening to some songs, but as he is enjoying music, Texel comes in front of him and starts to annoy him. Angus asks her where she got the knife from, but Texel says she doesn't have any knife with her. Angus puts his earpods in, as he has no interest in conversing with Texel. So to get his attention, Texel starts to act inappropriately in front of everyone in the waiting lounge. Angus has no option but to indulge in a conversation with her and listen to her story. Angus finds that her way of speech is quite similar to what he had said earlier at the conference. She is quoting some of the stuff he spoke about at the conference. He checks his conference pictures, and in one of them, he finds a girl who looks quite similar to Texel. He calls his manager, but his suspicion gets negated by the manager, who tells him that nobody named Texel Texter attended his conference. Now she starts her story right from where she had left off earlier. The third part of her story begins, the part with romance. When she was 18 years old, her mother left her, and then she moved to Paris to start a new life. One day, while she was at a famous cemetery, she saw an attractive girl. Texel immediately fell in love with that girl. She wanted to talk to her, but this girl ignored her and went away from her. The rejection made her angry, so Texel started following her, and when the right moment came, when no one was around them, she attacked her from behind. When the girl was still unconscious, Texel tried to feel her body. Her perverted action was only stopped when she heard some girls passing by. She started laughing, and her hysterical laugh woke up the unconscious girl, who immediately got up and ran away. Texel searched for almost 2 years, but she could not find her anywhere. She had lost her first love. Then one day, she finally found her. She gathered enough courage to talk to her. The girl could not recognize Texel, and she had started to think that she was just a friend of her husband. So she invited Texel to her house. Texel got very happy and went to her house the very next day. They both had some coffee and shared a small conversation, having a nice time. The girl told her that although she was living in the city for many years, she never liked this place. And although she never liked being there, she could also not leave it. It was almost like she had Stockholm Syndrome. Hearing this, Texel started laughing. And at this point, her hysterical laughter gave her identity away. The girl realized that Texel is the same girl whom she met 2 years ago at the cemetery. She got scared and took out a knife in self-defense. Texel tried to tell her how much she loved her, but the girl was not ready to listen to her. They both had a struggle with the knife, and Texel eventually ended up killing that girl. She loved that girl and didn't want to kill her, but she was forced to do it by none other than her inner enemy, the same one who forced her to kill her best friend Feline. According to Texel, it was a perfect murder, as there was no proof left and there wasn't any witnesses. Texel then found a picture on the floor where the name Isabel was written, and this was a gift from her husband Jeremy. Now Angus is in shock at this revelation that his wife was killed by this young girl. He starts to think how this could be possible. His wife disappeared from Paris 20 years ago, and Texel only looks old enough to be 20 years old. It makes no sense at all. He knows that she's lying, but Angus is disturbed nonetheless. He goes to wash his face, and Texel follows him in there as well. She asks him to kill her because she was his wife's murderer. She is his enemy, and he needs to get rid of her. At first, Angus ignores her, but when Texel keeps getting on his nerves, Angus finally snaps and slams her head on the bathroom mirror. Angus is disturbed, and he wants to know how Texel knows about his wife and why she's lying about killing her, but Texel doesn't give him any answers. Then the announcement says that the flight out of Paris is ready. Angus leaves the bathroom and boards his flight. After getting inside the plane, Angus is feeling uneasy. Texel is supposed to be on the same flight with him, but a lot of time goes by and she's still not gotten on board. He cannot leave without knowing all the answers, so he leaves the plane and goes back to the waiting lounge where Texel is. Angus asks if his wife is still alive. The stories that Texel had told him were similar to his life. He thinks that maybe Texel is his daughter. He wants to know if what he's thinking is all true, but Texel asks him first to narrate his life story. He starts telling his story from 20 years ago when his wife hadn't left him and he was still working at that Paris airport. He was happy, and according to him, he was living a perfect life. But Isabel was not happy. She wanted to leave, and she had secretly purchased an air ticket out of Paris to the Netherlands. Angus accidentally found this in her notebook. He was angry, but he did not confront her about this and went about his normal life, hoping she would actually leave him. But then very next day, when he returned home, his wife was gone, and the only thing he saw was a pregnancy test. His wife was pregnant, and despite that, she left him all alone in Paris. After this, he left the city, never to look back. And now Texel is in front of him, who claims to be Dutch and knows the life of Angus. He asks if she really is his daughter, and Texel replies that she indeed is. However, this is all a dream. Angus is still inside the plane, and he never really got off it. Everything he saw up until now was just in his mind. He never met a girl named Texel, and she never really told her story involving the death of his wife. In fact, the stories we all saw was of none other than Angus himself. He had created this non-existent character in his mind. Texel was a part of his subconscious trying to remind him about his past. Nobody except for him was able to see Texel. In reality, Angus was the one who lived a very sad childhood, just like Texel had narrated her childhood to be like. He was the one who had a best friend whom he killed due to his jealousy, and also he was the one who found Isabel and tried to sexually harass her while she was unconscious. Just like Texel, he met her 2 years later, but instead of taking her life, he got married to her. After some time, Isabel was not happy with this marriage and she wanted to leave him. When he discovered that his wife was leaving him, he got angry and stabbed her to death. He thought that she was running away from him and it was a big rejection for him, so he could not take it. After taking the life of Isabel, he dumped her body in the same airport he was working in. To him, it was a perfect murder that only he knew of and got away with it. The red spot on the airport model is the same place where he buried his wife. This is why it's only visible to him and no one else. After murdering his wife, Jeremy's mind crafted a new story in which his wife left him and got out of Paris. He kept reminding to himself that it was the only truth and he never really committed murder. He lived a normal life of a successful architect who was left by his wife. But when he stepped foot back in Paris, all of the memories started coming back in the shape of Texel, who reminded him of the past and of the fact that it was him who murdered his wife. Texel is his perfect enemy, someone who knows all and everything about him, but is also visible to him only. She holds the power to make him realize his crime and remind him about the past. So Angus has to get rid of her as well. He overcomes his fear and kills Texel. He buries her in his thoughts, just like he buried the dead body of his wife. After that, he goes back to living a normal life where he's just a successful, yet a sad architect who was left by his wife and not a cold-blooded murderer. Thanks for watching. Tell us down in the comments section what you thought of this movie, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon to never miss out on our future videos. Shutterstock